There is a kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep, prayer, or spiritual discipline can reach. It lives deeper than the body. It lives in the part of you that still remembers what it means to be light. The Gnostic masters had a name for this state: the dimming of the divine spark. The moment when a pneumatic soul begins to forget its own origin. What if the relentless tiredness you carry is not a sign of spiritual failure, but a sign that the Archon matrix is doing exactly what it was designed to do? Jesus Yeshua, the Gnostic master who spoke in the living language of Aramaic, knew this moment would come, and he encoded a specific word inside the oldest manuscripts to meet you here. That word is Anacon, and for over 2,000 years it has been buried inside translations that stripped it of everything it was meant to carry. Today, that word returns, and with it, the restoration that was always yours to claim. The exhaustion the Archon system was built to create. There is a tiredness the modern world has no category for. It is not burnout in the clinical sense. It is a specific, deep depletion that visits souls who are genuinely awake, who have glimpsed the light behind the veil and been forced to return, again and again, to a world that sees nothing of what they carry. The Gnostic tradition called such a being a pneumatic, one who houses a divine spark, a fragment of the eternal monad, encased in dense matter. This spark is the primary target. The Archon matrix does not operate the way most people imagine. It does not arrive with fire or dramatic confrontation. It works through attrition, through the slow accumulation of distraction, confusion, and spiritual misdirection that builds across years. It keeps you circling without arriving. It keeps you seeking without finding the rest your soul was built for. It presents you with systems that demand everything while returning. Nothing that genuinely restores. The longer you operate inside those systems, trying harder, praying more, reaching toward a light that always seems just beyond reach, the more the exhaustion becomes your default state. This is the mechanism, not the side effect. Jesus saw this. In Matthew 11, he did not look at the people before him and see sinners requiring correction. He saw pneumatic beings, souls of genuine divine origin, laboring under weights no human system had ever truly helped them carry. He was moved not by ordinary compassion, but by what the Gnostic masters understood as deliberate activation, the response of one who knew the mechanics of the soul. He did not offer another doctrine. He offered a living Aramaic word, carrying the frequency of genuine restoration within its very sound. That word was Anacon. It carried within it the root niaa, a Semitic sound meaning to settle, to return to one's original place, to come to stillness, the way water returns to calm after it has been disturbed. This was not metaphor or religious comfort. This was a precise transmission from a Gnostic master who understood that your divine spark does not need to be created, only restored. What the translation buried, and why when the Aramaic Gospels were transcribed into Greek, a process that began within decades of Jesus living and teaching, something important happened. The translators were working not just with language, but with culture. Greek was the language of the Roman Empire, of philosophers and statesmen. It carried certain assumptions about the nature of existence, the soul, and what it meant to be human. When they encountered the Aramaic word Anacon, they reached for the closest Greek equivalent, the word anaposis, which meant rest in the physical sense, cessation of labor, the pause between effort and effort. It was not a wrong translation, but it was an incomplete one, and incomplete translations, over centuries, become walls. The word ANIHKON in Aramaic carried layers of meaning that anaposis could not contain. The root niah was not simply about stopping. It was about returning, specifically about the soul returning to its original vibrational state. The state it held before the Archon system layered it with false identities, fear, patterns, and the exhausting noise of a world built to keep the divine spark dim. ANIHKON described the moment when a disturbed surface of water becomes still again, not because something was added, but because the disturbance was removed. Anacon was the gift of that removal. This is why Jesus did not say, "Work harder, pray longer, earn your rest." He said, "Come, Kumam, and I will give you Anacon." It was not an invitation to religious effort. It was an activation. The Archon system understood the danger of this word being received correctly. A pneumatic soul that fully inhabits Anacon cannot be controlled through exhaustion. It cannot be manipulated through spiritual striving. It cannot be kept circling in systems of endless effort if it is already returned to its original state of settled divine authority. This is why the translation flattened the word. This is why the Church built entire theological frameworks around earning rest rather than receiving it. What Jesus gave was never meant to be earned. Anacon was, and is, a direct transmission from the monad to the nomadic soul. If these Gnostic teachings are awakening a desire for inner transformation within you, we prepared Dois Guides, the sacred words, where this journey begins. The link is pinned in the comments. The architecture of Anacon. Inside the word to understand Anacon fully, you must first understand what the Gnostic masters meant by the natural state of the nomadic soul. In their cosmology, and this is not mythology, this is a map of inner reality. The divine spark housed within every human being originated in the monad, the primordial source of all existence. Before the creation of the material world, before the archons and the density of matter, the nomadic soul existed in a state the Aramaic speakers would recognize as neah, complete, settled, luminous. Anacon, in its deepest application, is the word Jesus used to point the soul back toward that state, not to a doctrine about it, to the actual state itself. The Aramaic language operates differently from Greek or Latin, where Greek tends toward abstraction building, concepts that point at reality from a distance. Aramaic is participatory. When a word is spoken in Aramaic, the ancient masters believed the sound itself carried the frequency of what it described. This is why Jesus consistently used Aramaic in his most powerful moments. Talitha kum, Ephatha Abba. These were not translations. They were transmissions. Anacon functions in exactly the same way. When spoken with awareness, when the nomadic soul speaks it not as a word, but as a returning, it does not describe rest. It initiates it. Modern neuroscience, without knowing it, has begun to describe what the Aramaic masters encoded in this word millennia ago. Research into the parasympathetic nervous system, the biological mechanism responsible for moving a human being out of the stress response and into genuine restoration, reveals that this shift cannot be forced. It cannot be achieved through willpower or spiritual performance. It is, precisely as Anacon suggests, something that happens when the conditions of disturbance are removed, when the soul stops performing and starts receiving. Jesus encoded this understanding into a single sound. He gave it to anyone willing to stop striving long enough to hear it. Anacon is that sound, and the way to receive it fully begins not with effort, but with recognition. Recognition that what you have been seeking has never required you to earn it. The Archon system, whether you understand it as a metaphysical reality, a symbolic description of control mechanisms, or both, operates through a single primary resource. Your energy, not in the abstract sense, but the specific life force the nomadic soul generates when engaged in the endless cycle of seeking, striving, worrying, and self-questioning. This is the fuel the matrix runs on, and there is no more reliable way to generate it than to keep a spiritually aware soul in a constant state of effortful searching. A soul that is always looking, never arriving, never truly at rest. That soul powers systems it was never designed to serve. Jesus understood this, as only a master of the soul's true mechanics could. When he spoke in Anacon, he was not simply offering comfort to weary people. He was performing an act of liberation, a pneumatic soul that enters genuine Anacon, not sleep, not passive resignation, but the active returning to its original divine state, immediately becomes unavailable to the Archon harvesting system. It cannot be manipulated by the fear of not being enough. It cannot be driven by spiritual guilt or religious striving. It cannot be exhausted into compliance. In the Gnostic understanding, this is why the deepest teachings of Jesus were suppressed, not because they were heretical, because they were effective. The Nag Hammadi texts, the Gnostic library hidden in Egypt for centuries, and rediscovered in 1945, contain consistent references to Jesus as a master who taught the pneumatics to withdraw their energy from the Archon system. The Gospel of Thomas, in particular, presents a Jesus who is not asking his followers to work harder or believe more fervently. He is asking them to find the state of settled, inner divine authority from which no Archon has access. Anacon is the Aramaic name for that state. It is the frequency of withdrawal from the system. It is the sound of the divine spark returning to its own luminosity. What Jesus offered in Anacon was not spiritual rest, as the world understands it. It was sovereign withdrawal, and the archons have been working to keep you from it ever since. If this teaching is stirring something in your heart, and you wish to explore it further, we prepared Dois Guides that explains the first sacred words, where the journey begins, their layers of meaning and the transformation they carry. The link is pinned in the comments. How to receive ANIHKON, the practice of return. How to receive ANIHKON, the practice of return, what the Gnostic masters understood, and what the tradition of Jesus preserved in its most authentic form, is that ANIHKON is not achieved through technique. It is not a meditation method or a breathing exercise, though either might help create the conditions for it. It is a recognition. The soul, which has always been whole, simply recognizes that the noise layered over it is not its own. The exhaustion is not its nature. The striving is not its purpose. Anacon begins in the moment you stop trying to become something and remember what you already are, a fragment of the eternal monad, a pneumatic being whose divine authority was never taken, only obscured. Jesus demonstrated this in his own life, in ways the Gospels preserved even through imperfect translation. He regularly withdrew from the crowds, not because he was avoiding them, but because he understood the necessity of returning to ANIHKON. Luke 5:16 records that he would often withdraw to lonely places and rest in the presence of the source. This was not religious performance. It was the Gnostic master maintaining his own alignment, returning to Anacon deliberately, consistently, as a practice of sovereign self-governance that no archon system could interrupt. You can do the same. Begin not with a long practice, but with a single breath. Before you speak Anacon, notice what you are doing. You are not beginning something. You are returning to something. Sit in a quiet space. Place your hands open in your lap, palms upward. The ancient gesture of reception, not petition. Take 3 slow breaths, releasing with each one the weight of whatever system has been demanding your energy. Then, softly, speak the word ANIHKON. Let the sound move through you rather than from you. Allow the root NIAH to do what it was designed to do, not create stillness, but reveal the stillness that was always beneath the noise. Do this for 3 minutes. Then remain in the silence that follows. What Jesus gave was not a word to be repeated endlessly, it was a door. You only need to step through it once, to remember that it was never locked. What you have received in this teaching is not a new concept. It is an ancient remembering. Anacon, the word J-E-S-U-S, spoke in the living language of Aramaic, the word that carries the root N-I-A-H in its very sound, was never meant to be a doctrine for the few. It was encoded for the pneumatic souls, who would find their way to it in their own time. If you are here, you are in that time. The exhaustion you carry is real. The weight of the archon system's demands is real. But what is also real is the state that Jesus pointed to, the settled, sovereign, luminous place inside you that the archons built an entire world to keep you from remembering. Anacon is the sound of that place, calling you back. It is not something you have to earn, build, or believe your way into. It is something you return to the way a river returns to the sea, the way a flame, when unobstructed, returns to its natural brightness. Jesus did not hide this. The masters of the Gnostic tradition did not hide it. What was hidden by systems that understood and feared what a fully restored pneumatic soul could become. You, choosing to receive this word today, are part of the restoration those systems were designed to prevent. Anacon belongs to you. It has always belonged to you. Today, you remembered. Visit Divine Light Academy, my site dedicated to bridging ancient spirituality and modern living. There you will find my advanced guides and a deep journey into Aramaic, the living language of the masters designed to help you access states of deep resonance, clarity, and personal revelation. The link is pinned in the comments. Get ready in the next video. I will reveal more sacred Aramaic words that unlock deeper spiritual understanding. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Right now, before you close this video, come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. And if this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours.